So basically, they dilate the cervix and they put a curette, which is a surgical instrument, and they chop up the fetus
Can you
inside.
He's just exaggerating. It's nothing like that.
I may have conceived, so now what? I think maybe I should just keep the baby, and I have a family, I have a husband, let's just raise the baby. So I think it calls for much more than
I don't
just...
think any husband would be okay with that, man.
No, I don't think any husband who's in a situation like that would just be able to decide like that.
Like,
You can call it sexist or not, but the fact of the matter lies that ultimately she is going to bear the child.
yes, she's going to bear the child. She's going to be responsible for bringing up the child.
No,
She's going
she
to
doesn't
be
have to be responsible for bringing up the
I
child.
was reading this book Freakonomics, and there was a parallel drawn between the reducing crime rates in US and the judgment of Roe vs. Wade passed. It said that because abortion is now allowed, so the number of unwanted kids go down, and within a span of 18 to 20 years, the number of people in that age group who are likely to become criminals goes down so drastically.
Absolutely.
That the crime rate goes down. कभी कभी मेरा मन करता है कि 100 बच्चे पैदा कर लूँ, कंपनी के लिए एम्प्लॉइज सारे बिना सैलरी वाले मिल जाएंगे. बट देन स्कूल की फीस याद आ जाती है, IIT जे कोचिंग क्लास का खर्चा दिमाग में आता है, एंड देन आई जस्ट गो बैक. बट ये तो तब होता है जब बच्चा आ जाता है. जब बच्चा नहीं आता है, देन देयर इज अ लॉट ऑफ डिली डालिंग जो होती है दिमाग में कि अभी करना है नहीं करना है. सिंस आई डोंट थिंक प्रेगनेंसीज in all the cases are planned. But dialing it back, there's a lot of moral dilemma that goes with it. And aaj ka topic abortion, we have with us Niharika as a lawyer, as an amicus. We have with us Veer, MBBS, practicing as a doctor. And we have Smriti as DM, DM nephrology.
nephrology.
So there's a moral dilemma with abortion, whether it's pro-life or pro-choice. And since it concerns women and their bodies, Veer, what do you think about it?
Okay. Abortion is not only a moral dilemma, it also happens to be a social, to a certain degree an ethnic in other places, and definitely a biological dilemma. And I mean, that's the way it is. Abortion is it is what it is. It is a social dilemma. It's everything that has to be around producing a child, procreating, and all the aspects of carnality and the carnal sins that we have to merge with it is what it is. But hai jo hai.
And what is your take? Where do you lie on the spectrum? Like, one is pro-life, where they say that it can't be done because the minute the fetus, the embryo is conceived or the child is conceived, there is life, and now we don't have the power.
Then you add in a philosophical dilemma, saying that what is life, and how you would concern what life is. What is your concern to what life is rather? Life is.
I mean, it can vary.
It can vary from anything. It can be these are choices, personal choices. I mean, you have your food concerns, for that matter, your dietary concerns. आप अगर non-veg खाते हो तो वहाँ पे भी life है. So I mean, these things, I know it's really it isn't you can't actually give abortion versus non-vegetarianism or any sort of.
Or when you say like a pro-life person,
but if you're talking about life as existence as itself, as existence, let's not call it life. Let's just call it existence.
Okay.
All right. We have existence. Once you give darja or any sort of glorification to existence, then we have a major problem. So, and when it comes to life or any sort of existence, there are a lot of factions, a lot of groups, a lot of people who have different views and different ideas about what conception is, what life is, what existence is. So, I mean, ultimately, it is a biological virtue, but we don't see that happening. It's more of a social and an economical and everything else but a biological virtue, is what I believe.
Since you mentioned existence, do you think like a person with pro-life opinion and him being or her being a non-vegetarian is a hypocrite?
No.
No?
I don't.
Since on one hand he is
I don't
definitely
think-
exploiting a creature for his...
Yes, but human beings are, we have come to be or have made out to be, we are apex predators. Whether you guys like it or not, we are top of the food chain. And yes, we have something known as cognition, and we can equate things that are better for us and not better for us. So yes, I don't think non-vegetarianism, but is the same as having an abortion or anything of that sort. But I do think that any sensible human being can find out the varying degrees from what life and existence is for that person's virtue and for their good
So
belief.
the degree of our sentience will determine whether...
Yes,
whether
definitely, biologically, definitely.
Well, that's definitely a lot of importance to the humankind, considering that the present trends are leaning towards veganism, towards being cruelty-free, etc.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have something like a pro-life person who will say that anything done to the fetus after conceiving is cruelty.
But at the same time, the majority of the proportion of people opposing something like abortion are not exactly in tune or in term with veganism as well. So you got to understand that for them it is human life and not life. It's not like prani jo hai, it has life, it has existence. It isn't about that. It has more to do with religious, probably social norms, more than biological norms, is what I have to say.
Social norms.
Yeah.
That's interesting because social norms mein, when I was interviewing, not actually researching for this podcast and trying to find women who have gone through abortion, I came across a number of instances where they went to doctors and in return, rather than getting a prescription or any solution, they got moral policing.
Okay. I can't speak on behalf of all doctors saying that, okay, all doctors are not going to judge you. But if a certain instance like that happened and you are well within the realms of aborting a child, you can always shift your doctor and get a second opinion. And that is also something that...
But it's
it happens. That this is human error. I mean, a doctor is also human. Human is also a human being. Ultimately, at the end of the day, whether he has the right or doesn't have the right to judge you, that is not up for debate. If the person is judging you and you feel judged, and you feel that this is not a certain thing, in India, you have the right for a second opinion at every time. So it's that I don't think should be a debate.
And I think I would like to step in here when we're talking about the debate about pro-life versus pro-choice. Why are we even talking about it in the Indian context? Because this debate right now is going on in view of the Supreme Court in the United States overruling their earlier 50-year-old judgment of Roe versus Wade. So Roe versus Wade was a time when a lady had questioned the reproductive laws in the state of Texas. And Roe versus Wade, that particular judgment, it tried to strike a balance with respect to what is life and life and the health of the lady who is possibly about to bear a child or is bearing a child. So Roe versus Wade was very another thing that we have to keep in mind is the laws in Texas were one of the most stringent laws.
Texas को यूपी कहा जाता है अमेरिका का.
Well, I will not comment on that, but yes, you get where I'm coming from. So it's not just Roe versus Wade. So Roe versus Wade के बाद फिर there was another judgment by the Supreme Court in the United States, Parenthood versus Casey. Now Roe versus Wade was more on morality, कि abortion हम क्यों कर रहे हैं, करना चाहिए नहीं करना चाहिए, because unlike our constitution which provides us the right to life and liberty, the United States Constitution does not. And Parenthood versus Casey was morely on the point of procedure. Something as simple as if you arrest a person, you have to produce them in court. You have to tell them why you're arresting them. So this particular judgment, the one which we've seen in June of this year, so Roe versus Wade said that you have to look at the viability of the fetus, and you have to consider the health of the woman and her well-being, and in view of that, you have to take a call whether you would like to go ahead with the termination of the pregnancy or not. Now, in this decision that we've seen in the Supreme Court, the recent decision, now here the court is saying that once fertilization takes place, the woman has no right whatsoever with respect to that particular fertilization. The state can force that woman to give birth, and that is where the debate about pro-life versus pro-choice.
This is the implication of the judgment or the judgment itself?
This is the judgment in itself. So this is where the the debate comes in कि आप pro-life हो या आप pro-choice हो. Pro-life matlab you have to give birth. You don't have a choice. Pro-choice is you can decide whether you would like to give birth or not. Now, what you were asking Veer here about what is life, in my personal view, I feel that life is not just giving birth to a fetus that a fertilized an embryo which grows on into a baby, and then you'll give birth and then you'll have an infant. Life is everything that happens thereafter. Life is giving that child the proper care, giving that child proper education, giving that child proper health care. And वहाँ पे तो खत्म नहीं होता. We're all beyond that stages in our respective lives. So we know कि college, school के बाद बहुत कुछ करना पड़ता है, बहुत कुछ होता है. So I think pro-life or pro-choice, that's a debate that
is not meant for India for
yeah,
sure.
that's a debate that's
it's
not
very
meant for
American
India.
debate.
What is
Yeah.
India? What's the status in India?
So the status,
Act?
So in India in 1971, the Parliament enacted the Medical Termination of Pregnancy Act. Now, this was a time when a lot of countries across the globe, they were legalizing abortion. Now, MTP Act, I'm going to refer to Medical Termination Pregnancy as MTP Act. Now, this act, there's a committee which was formulated, and that committee came up with a number of reasons why we should have such a legislation in picture. And the primary and the most important reason behind this act was to ensure that women don't end up getting unsafe abortions. We have a history of a lot of issues which are maybe unique to our country or unique to our this particular geographical area, that being female infanticide and female feticides. But at the same time, that was a period in the country, in the world, when children, once they were born with deformities. They were born with a lot of issues, or
In fact, also to state that when 1971, when we had that abortion MTB Act, let's just refer to it as an MTB Act, because abortion is not the right term in India. We have to speak about it as medical termination. And also because the population boom.
Yeah,
Yes.
but I'd like to come in here. So the committee gave a lot of recommendations, और उसमें specifically population control वाली चीज़ को legislature ने focus नहीं किया था, for the simple reason that we did not as a nation want to promote abortion as a means to control the population. We have other schemes, I'm sure we'll get to those later, but then again, another reason why we haven't used the word abortion is because medical termination of pregnancy, and who am I to talk about it, you guys know it better. But
Well, it's synonymous. You
yeah.
can use it interchangeably,
So,
but
a termination of a pregnancy could not just, it's not necessary that, that pregnancy was not planned. It could be health reasons, the fetus could be, could have deformities, or could lead to kind of
The death of the
childbirth.
mother.
Yeah, right.
maternal deaths. And yes,
And
absolutely.
that's the reason why we have not used the word specifically abortion in our legislation. It's not defined, and it's not used by any of the courts of law while deciding any of the judgments, because we don't want to use the word. It's termination of pregnancy. What if somebody is bearing a child and then she comes across a situation where that fetus is not viable anymore? So she should have the right to terminate that.
And what is the law according to, like, अगर सीधी बात कितने हफ्ते क्या,
let's
what's
just
the law?
know the law of
Okay,
MTB
so-
from 1971.
So MTP Act was amended a couple of times, and how it stands today is there are two specific periods, 12 weeks and 24 weeks. Till the time the fetus is, the gestational period is about 12 weeks, and if I'm not, the 12 weeks, they begin from the last day of the...
So basically, when you talk about the MTP Act, when you're talking about medically, the time of gestation is calculated from the time you conceived. So basically, from your last menstrual period is when we calculate it. So technically, if you find out after you've missed your period and 5 days later you run a test and you realize you're pregnant, you're actually 4 weeks into the pregnancy already.
Yeah.
And so that's about 5 weeks gone for most people by the time they find out or figure out that they are pregnant. And the MTP Act initially said that for up to 12 weeks, when the fetus is extremely, extremely small, there is no organogenesis, no organ formation or anything that has happened, you can go ahead and have an abortion, an MTP, which is basically either a medical way or a surgical way. For up to 12 weeks, initially you needed only one registered medical practitioner or a gynecologist to sign off on that. And from 12 to 20 weeks, you needed about 2 people on board to do that.
Right.
And
I believe that 20
And that is
years
amended.
have been-
yeah,
That
so
is
that's
now
been
been
amended a little. There was a case which came up in the middle that I'm sure you guys know about. So practically, when we are talking about pregnancy, a lot of congenital abnormalities happen much later. So there are 2 things. One is mother's life, one is child's life. At any point during medical practice for us, a mother's life is of utmost importance.
Right.
So if we feel a pregnancy is putting a mother at risk for whatever reason, like she has an underlying kidney disease or she has an underlying heart disease or she has some disease whatsoever which can cause life-threatening complications to her through the pregnancy, we always give them an option to get
medical termination.
medical termination.
And how much does consent weigh in when getting an abortion?
Well, that's it. Well, before consent being weighed in, I would like to establish the facts of the MTP Act. So until the 20th week, you require a single physician to allow you to have an MTP. After the 20th week till the 24th week, you need to have 2 physicians to allow you to get a medical termination. India, after the 24th week, also allows abortions.
But that
Well,
is through special procedure through court, if I'm
That
not
is
wrong.
a special procedure through court. It requires a medical board of 3 doctors. That is your gynecologist, a pediatrician, and a radiologist as well. And plus, I think a judge additionally
Yeah.
for the case to take part. So, yeah, I mean, this is what the MTP Act, our MTP Act says to us, for us medical practitioners. 20 to 24 and post 24. When you ask of abortions, saying like if the person has if the fetus has some kind of congenital abnormality or anything of that, it's always given. It is given if the child is not a proper, is disabled or will have some sort of neonatal problems. Abortion right, medical termination rights are always given.
In simple terms, अगर बच्चे के साथ कोई भी problem है,
हाँ.
then in all likelihood, up to a certain
Yes,
extent,
absolutely.
abortion
And
will be
more
allowed.
force towards maternal health. If anything happens to the mother, it is given.
So-
Absolutely given.
I'd like to step in here. So like these guys correctly pointed out that now it's 20 weeks and 24 weeks. When the act was first enacted, it was 12 weeks. You needed one doctor ka recommendation that
Right.
you can go for medical termination. If it was anything between 12 to 20 weeks, you needed two doctors
doctors.
Yes.
to prescribe this, that you can go ahead with the procedure. Now we had an amendment just last year. Now that bill increased the limit from 12 weeks. The first limit where you needed the prescription from one doctor was 12 weeks to it came up to 20 weeks,
20
and
weeks.
from 20 weeks it came to
To
24
24.
weeks.
Right.
Now here the logic was that the legislature and they during the course of the debates they understood and they saw that when this act came into existence, that was 50 years ago, jab 12 week or 20 week made sense. At that time medical science was at that stage.
Yeah.
But now the medical science, the current technology, I think, supports
It's way
that
more advanced than what it was
Correct.
50
Used to
years
be.
ago.
Yes.
and so that is one aspect of it. The second aspect is that the courts were burdened by a plethora of cases where the pregnancy has gone beyond the period of 20 weeks, and so the procedure after because the act only provides till 20 weeks. So 20 weeks के बाद लोग high court में जाते थे, petition file करते थे that this is my grievance, and it's not and yes, it's correct that the viability of the fetus and its health and the mother's health is paramount. But there are a bunch of other reasons that the act provides. That this is why these are the grounds under which you can get the pregnancy terminated. Being of course, apart from the health
child,
of the
child and
fetus.
mother
No, but don't
we
you
can't
feel that
refer to the
our-
fetus as a child right
Okay,
now.
the health of the
yeah,
fetus
as a-
and the
yeah,
health of the
as a
mother.
fetus.
It's only a child after it's born.
Yeah, it's only
So until then, it's always
Okay.
going to be
a fetus. Yeah.
And what are the other grounds?
Health of the fetus, the health of the mother, and if the mother is if the pregnancy is a result of a act of
Rape.
sexual violence like rape
Or incest.
or incest, or if the mother is of unsound mind and she will not be capable of the act doesn't say that she will not be capable, but
Being psychologically sound post the delivery.
no, it's more like that the mother has to be in a position to take care of the
Yeah.
baby, and therefore the mental and the physical health of the woman
So
specifically.
it's safe to say it's more like consent. I mean, not.
I'll come to consent, but
it's
consent is something that is also something that
maternal consent, more or less. Like
Yes, but
yes,
consent
I
was,
would
you know,
like to not prolong, rather continue this delivery and rather have it happen.
fair. So the woman, yeah. So like
That unsound
before.
part really struck with me because I was reading this case and there was this woman in a state-run welfare center, and she was
In our country?
intellectually- Huh?
In our country,
Yeah.
in our country, and she was intellectually challenged.
right?
Safe to say that. And she was raped. And then the state was advocating that let's have the child aborted, but she did not consent to that.
So
And-
with respect to consent, what the law states, what it used to state and what it states right now, what it used to state is that as long as you are no, you've attained the age of 18, you have the right to go and request for medical termination of pregnancy, as long as it's affecting your mental and physical health. Now here the dilemma is that मेंटल हेल्थ क्या है ये हमने कहीं डिफाइन नहीं किया, ना एक्ट में ना कोर्ट्स ने कभी डिफाइन किया है. दैट इज द फर्स्ट थिंग.
So that is actually up to the gynecologist who is
Yes,
actually
that's
attending
correct.
to your case.
Yeah.
Whether or not it's up to them to decide whether or not you are.
Yeah.
But broadly speaking, this act basically is extremely pro-choice to some
Yeah.
extent, where it gives every woman the right to decide whether or not they're ready to bring this child into this world and care for it. Because bringing the child is one part. We know that in this country, practically speaking, from my practice, when I first started my internship, I have met girls as young as 23 years old who have come for their 5th baby, 6th baby. Okay, and that's like crazy because that means they've started having babies since they were like 16 years old, 17
Probably
years
even-
old, or even before
yeah,
that.
before.
And a lot of the decisions were actually made by the family members and not these girls, because at 16 in India you're under so much pressure that you don't know what you're doing is whether it's right or not.
So
You're
again,
just-
as far as consent is concerned, if if you've attained the age of 18, you're responsible. You can make
Yeah.
make this decision on your own, on paper at least. Practically, we'll get to that. But if you're a minor, or if you are somebody who's of unsound mind, then you need your parents or your guardians to consent
Yeah.
to the termination.
Yes, for any period of conception, if a patient is of unsound mind, all they require is a guardian to have that abortion
Right.
completed. Medical termination of
Yeah.
pregnancy. Before anything else, Roe versus Wade, if we have to keep that in mind with context of what is happening towards us, what we have to say is that Roe versus Wade happened post that they didn't allow Roe to abort a child, medically terminate a child, or rather abort it in the US. And after that, what has happened? Why is there so much of a halla about the entire situation about Roe versus Wade? After, as you said before this, Casey versus Parenthood made it even more difficult. It started putting barricades on the civilians, the citizens of the US to get a medical termination, because some states did not allow these things to happen.
And they'll ban it.
And
So
they banned
even
it
with
completely.
Roe versus Wade in
Texas on
place,
the forefront.
Yeah.
Texas not being the forefront. Texas, in fact, after Roe versus Wade, did somewhat kind of take back in their laws. But there are other states. A lot of other states, probably the state of Michigan, does not allow abortion at all.
At all, yeah.
At all.
Yeah.
This
So
is the-
Roe versus Wade did not mean that the
Not for
entire
rape,
of the
not for
United
incest,
States
nothing.
allowed abortion.
And
There
by
was
abortion,
still.
does it mean like surgical abortion or like
See,
even
now
a
surgical abortion.
even an
Now,
eye pill?
see, surgical abortion is a little. See, now
The eye
there's a
pill
difference
is
between
not an
contraception and abortion.
Yeah, I think let's talk about what are the kinds of
There's a
ways-
big difference between
Yeah.
Please.
contraception.
Now's your time.
However, contraception and abortion is a big difference. Contraception is prophylactic, preventive.
I know it,
sorry,
yeah.
preventive measures to conceive a child. Okay, you can have a lot of methods, barrier methods. You have OCPs. You have a lot of things, hormonals. You have IUDs. You have plenty of devices that help you to not conceive a child. Now, the thing in the US is that in some certain Republican red states, probably I'm not really aware of the contraception laws in the US and how much they are, like how much morning after pill is sold at their OTC counters. But I know for a fact that even after that time is passed, you cannot get an abortion. In fact, even for it being, if your child does also have some abnormalities, poses a risk to maternal health, you still can't have an abortion. So that's the problem.
But what if in a scenario, let's say contraception fails, matlab Durex condoms guarantees 99.7% of the
In
times
India,
it'll work.
the most commonest case of MTP is failure of contraception.
Failure of contraception.
And our country allows that to happen. And before anything else,
What do you
guys,
what do you exactly mean when you say that our country allows that to happen?
failure of contraception is one valid method when a woman can walk in.
Oh, you mean to say that
Failure,
MTP is
the
allowed
person-
due
the
to
person-
failure?
no,
Yeah,
the person
correct.
used a
So there are
contraceptive method.
Various reasons you need to state for why you're getting an MTP done.
Right.
So there's like a form that we need to fill in if we are going for it. So the 21 Act actually kind of makes it more confidential. Now we don't even put in names; they're just numbers and codes given to everyone. But there's a reason which is stated in it. So there are
Right.
4-5 reasons, like you said, mental health, emotional health, physical health of mother and child. But one of the reasons is unplanned pregnancy. So initially it was just for married people. Now
Right.
for almost everyone
Yeah, that's
who was not intending to get pregnant and got pregnant
Right.
because of failure of contraception. It's a very, very valid reason.
Yeah.
You can state it as a reason and then go ahead with your MTP.
I just want to say one thing. Okay, so
Yeah.
this is a 2021 amendment. The one specific change which Smriti just pointed out is that in a particular section where it said married woman and husband, now says woman and partner.
Partner.
So woot woot.
Yeah,
Yes,
I mean,
it is
kudos
actually-
to
Yeah.
the government.
Because I'm aware of way too many people who went to get a termination of their pregnancy. They were obviously not married at the time, and they were literally harassed by the hospital or the doctor that they'd gone to. They ended up paying much more. They ended up paying like thousands of rupees for the simple reason that आप अपने मम्मी पापा को बुलाइए, आप pregnant कैसे हैं, आप कैसे करा सकते हैं. So that's something that's
Kudos to Dr. Harshvardhan who managed to.
yes,
get
it was
moving
his
on.
yes, this was his.
More than, kudos to the Indian government, man, the Indian legislature, because we keep, for us, it's easy to shit on the people who frame these laws and stuff, but man, India has really, really progressive laws coming to abortion, medical termination, whatever you want to call it.
We need
Very-
to. There are
very
8 women
good.
dying every day because of
And-
unsafe abortions. So we really need to amp up
So
the game.
that's the
And-
thing. When
Yeah, sorry. The point is that despite having such progressive laws, society as a whole is, I guess, somewhere you also need these laws to be so strong because the general perception in the society and the general control over a female's reproductive health is so strongly controlled by the family, the husband. There's just so much social stigma around getting pregnant in general. So you need to have these strong laws so that it can actually enable. And I'm telling you practically, despite having these laws in place, there are so many there's just few people who actually exercise it. Like, I mean, there are of course females who maybe belong to a more privileged background, but for most of the lower socioeconomic strata,
yeah.
females, 8th baby, 9th baby, don't want it, but family doesn't allow abortion. They go
perhaps
ahead
don't
with
even
it.
have access to proper.
Yeah,
health
Probably
care.
don't
Yeah.
even know that they can get
So
this
yeah,
done.
exactly.
They
the
don't
thing is,
know.
so the thing is, in the US, you have abortion laws that are like reprimanded by the state and say, oh, you can't have an abortion. India, we don't have such problems. India, abortion laws medical termination laws are absolutely fine. In India, we have different issues. We have another terminology, safe and unsafe abortions. And that is a problem that we have. So the National Family Health Survey, which is the bureau that takes charge of these things, So the last, I think, if I remember correctly, in 2015, the last time I studied PS, in 2015 they had a survey saying that 56% of abortions that happened in India were done at home, but not by a registered medical practitioner.
How do they do it at home?
Well,
Daima.
there are plenty of
Daima.
ways.
Midwives,
What if-
nurses.
Guys, you have people who seem to be a certain way, tantric, or whatever, man.
But what do they do? Like, what do they do? Like,
You have
Extricate the
everything
fetus.
from castor oil
To pita sticks.
yeah,
you put-
papita,
papita.
For abortion?
beach.
Yes.
Yeah, like you have so many
You
desi
have,
nuskas to
the
everything.
introduction of steam. A woman basically, squatting over a hot pot of steam, and the steam will create some kind of thermoregulatory dysgenesis in the fetus, and then that's about it. So yes, these things
Very
do happen,
unsafe.
and they're
Yeah.
absolutely unsafe. So this is the problem that we have in our country. Abortion laws are absolutely fine. They're perfect. I mean, not perfect. Nothing is perfect.
Very progressive.
Very progressive, and this is the best that we
But-
can get to the highest.
these are the unsafe ways to get aborted.
Yeah.
And I'm still stuck on that. So, what are the safe ways to get
no,
aborted?
and before that, the NFHS did that, and then again in 2020 they conducted a survey because the enforcement and the crackdown on such practices were given a lot of stick. That's why it changed to 50 in 2020. The NFHS conducted a survey again, and then they said that 56% of the abortions was safe. But that's still a high number.
But
44% was still having unsafe abortions.
Statistics on abortions, the official statistics on abortions, how much can we trust them? Like, how many women out
Well,
there
how
are
much?
willing to come forward and say
But the
that
point is, if you're still getting whatever sample size you've taken in your survey, if you're still getting that half of those people are
Yeah.
going for unsafe. So even if you
Yeah.
want to be very optimistic about it and say, oh, it's not 44,
Yeah.
it's 30%. That's still a huge number.
Yeah.
It
so
is.
it comes down to access at the end
Yeah.
of it, and how
access
easy
and knowledge
is it for you. Yeah, knowledge.
I in my limited experience, I've seen that people don't know. And
Yeah.
I don't think that an unwanted pregnancy is just an issue for a woman. I think it's something that affects, you know, this argument about pro-life versus pro-choice. I don't think it's just the women's body and the women who are going to suffer. It's also their partners. I mean, in a conventional, normal scenario, if a woman has a partner, obviously that therefore she's pregnant, and I'm sure no reasonable man would want to see the woman that he's with in so much pain, physical, emotional, and everything.
Not
So,
to forget the child as well.
The
the
child
child
as
is going
well,
to be
yeah.
there. They
We
clearly
have a
don't want
गाली
it.
around it. We say पड़ोसी की
Well,
गलती है
well, it's easy.
Yeah.
Well, it's easy for us to be idealistic and say that, oh, okay, not in every case does a man think of the woman, and also the family barging down upon his throat and the woman's throat. It's not that easy. It is not easy.
I'm sure, but you know, I'm just talking from people our age.
Rather not our age, rather of see, that's what I said before when we started this entire conversation. We spoke about abortion, medical domination being it is an ethnic, social, philosophical dilemma.
Right.
In India, we have a plenty of socioeconomic status.
That's there.
And
yeah.
if you speak about us, it is cherry picking.
Right.
I would like to look at it that way, because we do not constitute the majority of this
At all.
country at
Yeah,
all.
Yeah.
There are a lot of ladies lamenting. Still, it's basically women in this country today still in some parts, although it has changed, and I'm always for that change. It has always been a fact that women are just like conduits to making children. And until they get that Raja Beta,
Yeah.
the process will it has been cracked down big time. Kudos to the government for doing that, but it still exists, and that is something that is your cultural dilemma of
मैंने
of
स्टार्टिंग में
it.
बोला था मैं 100 बच्चे करना चाहता
So I'm talking about this micro society that, you know, like probably where we come from. I don't think it's just the woman's problem. I think it's also equally a problem of the guy. I've had
It's
friends who
never
freak
a
out.
women's problem.
Yeah.
like,
it shouldn't be, it should be the couple's
It
responsibility.
is. It is the couple's problem.
Then
And
that is cherry picking, guys. See, because I would like to just claim it. We're from educated families. We have no privileged backgrounds. Acknowledge all of it. When you go to a government hospital, when you see your patients, man, they have no privilege of that whatsoever. They don't. And
तभी तो पपीते से करवाते हैं और पीटा sticks and
I mean,
So, jokes apart, yeah, that is true.
Yeah, why
not
don't you
joking.
tell us about
Yeah, that is
I'm just
like what
Yeah,
are
yeah.
the different ways in which a woman can undertake
So, okay. So, just for information's sake, whenever you do go for abortion, it depends on the time frame. As the time progresses, of course, the fetus grows bigger and it becomes more and more difficult to abort it. So, initial few weeks, generally up to 63 days, the ideal way to get aborted is through medical management, which is they give you a couple of pills. It's not over the counter. When they initially came out, the pills were over the counter, but now you need a proper prescription. You take the pills, there are a set of pills, they tell you to take one and then they give you a 48 hours gap and then they tell you to take the other pill. And then it's basically what you experience is a very strong kind of period at the end of it where you have strong cramps and all the products of conception are expelled out.
expelled
Okay.
out. And that's when abortion
Yeah.
is...
well, not
Complete.
no. Then after that, the
You
14th
get a-
week, you get an
Yeah, so
repeat ultrasound.
14th week depends on when you got it. So if you got it at 7th week, a few
Yeah.
days later, you'll have to. So the bottom line is you have to be in contact with a doctor.
कितने
They will
तरीके
keep
के
a...
abortion होते हैं actually?
But can
So
I
there's
like
a medical-
about this particular
Yeah.
form of abortion? Can everyone opt for this particular if they're
No.
within the 63-day
No, no.
period? Can every pregnancy?
So this is again, that's why you need a gynac in the picture. They assess you fully. They see what is your progress, what is your history, what is your medical condition, all of that. And looking like up to 63 weeks, 90% people will fall in the purview of this. Okay, there might be a few people who have some medical condition of their own, which doesn't allow them to go for this kind of procedure. So they will advise you a surgical procedure. Most of the surgical procedures also initially are quite simple. They are more of a daycare kind of procedure. They'll call you in the morning, they'll give you some pills. They basically clear out your uterus surgically. But there are no major cuts and nicks as such. And by evening, if all goes well, you can actually go back home.
But
So if we come to both these methods, if a woman wants to, let's say she's just weighing her options, should I
Yeah.
just go for the first method or should I go for
you
the
can't,
surgery?
no, you can't measure those options. Those
Okay.
options are given to you by the
doctor.
practitioner.
But
that
you
allows
can
it.
have a conversation
Yeah.
about
with
them.
him, yes.
So what I want to know is financially, how much will the first method cost a woman to terminate her pregnancy versus the second?
So currently,
let's say in a
if-
government hospital.
So you can't get an abortion anywhere you want. Okay.
Of course.
There has to be. It's mostly the person has to be authorized to do it. So they're either gynacs, but you don't have so many specialists, especially in the peripheral areas, in the PHCs, primary healthcare centers, and all. So you can have certain registered medical practitioners who basically are trained in gynac for say 6 months, 8 months. They have the experience of how to do these things
Right.
for peripheral centers mostly. For cities like Delhi and Bombay and everywhere else, you will get a gynac who will do it. Government hospitals are authorized. Most of the small clinics, you have to be aware, are not authorized.
Right.
You need to get a permission from the government which says that yes, you can do it. Most of the big corporate hospitals, bigger nursing homes will, in all probability, have
Will
the
be authorized.
authorization.
Department.
Yeah.
Yes.
So when you go to a gynac for this, if you're
Let's say we're talking about a lady in Delhi.
a lady in Delhi,
Yeah.
you walk up, preferably find a gynac for yourself. You get the ultrasound, you determine you're actually pregnant, how many weeks you're into it, and then you basically discuss your options. Early into pregnancy, it's like I said, medical. The pills are comparatively cheap. It's home based. They write the prescription. They'll explain the process to you. They'll tell you what are the red flag signs. If sometimes you can have some side effects to the pills, etc. Sometimes it doesn't work. The fetus doesn't come out. Sometimes it's partial. Some amount of bleeding might happen. Some of it might stay in. So always go for a follow-up checkup to make sure that it's completely been aborted. Failed medical
There's
methods.
a chance like even if you have
Yeah.
a very strong period, the fetus still might
Yeah.
not be aborted.
You might
Yes,
have
yes.
retained products of conception, and that can actually lead to
Yeah.
infections and
That
all
is
later.
the worst.
Yeah.
It leads to sepsis and man.
Yeah,
that's
that
it.
can really like.
That's really bad.
Yeah.
So before anything, so to verify, after a chemical abortion, before your 20th week, these abortions.
Chemical abortion means taking
The
a pill.
medical
Pill,
one,
yes.
the medical one.
Your MTP, you get an MTP kit of 2 abortifacients, and you have to take it in course. And after that, subsequently, you have to go to a radiologist to verify
confirm.
that your fetus has no more. There is nothing in your womb, and ye theek hai. This is cleared out.
Yeah.
So
So you need this.
there is this medically recognized procedure where a doctor
Yeah.
will prescribe you a
Yes.
pill. There is that quick fix which you use, a 70.
It's not a quick fix.
eye pill. I'm talking about eye pill. like-
So eye
a
pill is
morning
again
after pill.
not-
A morning after pill is contraception. It is not a
That's a
abortifacient.
contraception.
So let's
Yes.
talk about what does the morning after pill does
So
to
a
a woman's
morning after
body
pill
versus
has
these
to be
pills.
taken right after the sexual intercourse has happened,
Yes.
and it basically changes the status of your uterus in such a way that you don't get pregnant.
So how healthy it is to have
So the
eye
hormones
pill.
basically that allow you to make that entire vessel of birth and the whatever. So it stops that from happening to begin with. So that's why the morning after pills are before 72 hours. Before anything of that sort can happen, you take it. So
You
that's early. I mean, two terms. That's not exactly early contraception, but yeah, it's after.
It's a form of contraception.
it's a form of
Basically means
contraception.
you're not pregnant yet, and you don't let anyone
you
get
can.
Just
pregnant.
preventing
And-
the
Yeah.
And how
Pregnancy
bad is
possibility
it
of
on
a
the
Yeah.
on the body of a woman? These are hormonal pills. Yes, it is
And
not.
high failure rates.
Yeah, and
High failure
Yes.
rates.
Because
So
like-
are you saying that eye pills have high failure rates and they take a
do
toll
have failure
on
rates, yes,
a
they-
woman's body? So
Not the best method of contraception, but
Right.
yes, if you do have an unplanned intercourse, then yes. That is
But
something
again-
is
this
better
is your
than
worst
nothing.
case scenario.
yeah,
Something
exactly.
better than
That I
nothing.
think this is a message that needs to go out there to the girls.
It's
This
not-
is
yeah.
for an case of emergency.
Emergency.
You
It's
wanna
not
give a
something
PSA
you
right
pop.
now? We can give a PSA, guys. 11 August till any of your morning
PSA,
or day
sorry?
after pills, public service announcement.
Okay.
Ki your morning after pills are like the last
Yeah.
worst case scenario for early contraception, guys. And after you miss that, then chalo आगे बढ़ते हैं MTP के तौर. And that's how it is.
You scare me.
Off.
I
Yes.
bought like
It is
five-
scary, man. It is
पाँच
scary.
डब्बे लेके मैं गया हूँ चलो कोई नहीं
The formation
Hope
of
not for the
fetus
same
is-
woman.
The formation
wouldn't.
The message is more for guys here than girls.
Then
that
yeah,
means, you know,
like yeah,
the
formation-
morning after pill is not the solution.
yeah.
No, that's also because I feel very responsible whosoever I'm whosoever I'm
So
having
please
sex
don't
with.
tell me you're doing this as a practice, you know, like every
I-
time, like le lo ye just for the sake of it types, you know.
No, yes,
this
that
is
that's true. I feel that girls tend to look at it क्योंकि उनको advertise ऐसे किया गया है ना कि okay fine, you think you had unsafe sex or you think something might be wrong, just take an eye
Yes,
pill. It's problem
It
sorted.
is like
you,
that.
you know what? The formation of a fetus is so much. Dr. Saab has also gone through the same lens. Studying embryology and obstetrics, gynecology, learning all those things. The way the fetus develops is one probably it is it's a very beautiful thing, but it's also a very complex thing. It's very it's complicated. Like if you have to get down dirty, looking at all levels of histogenesis, organogenesis, these things are very difficult.
Naturally, it's complex. We still haven't been able to determine certain
see,
parts of
The
it.
thing is, in a country like India, more than anything else, women's health itself is something that is completely ignored. Women, by themselves, do not have understanding of their own bodies to a high and large respect.
Yeah, that's why we're taking emergency pills every now and then.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And for a guy, what man? They be like, हाँ ले लो यार पिल कल नहीं बच्चा होगा चलो ठीक है
That's
सब.
the most irresponsible
Yeah.
thing I believe.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Oh my
honestly.
God.
And besides we were speaking of Roe versus Wade, which just happened like it happened like on the 6th of June or some
Earlier this week.
Earlier this week. Sorry. 900% increase in vasectomies in the US because of Roe versus Wade.
900%.
That's
Yes.
See,
smart.
this is where I was saying that an
Purush American
unwanted
guys, man,
Yeah.
they've taken a stand for their women.
Yeah, because unwanted pregnancy सिर्फ औरतों की दिक्कत नहीं है. It affects the other gender as
Yeah.
well, which is something that I
I think
think.
it really affects. Like I was dating this girl and okay, and 2 years later she calls me like, you know what, I'm
You're
pregnant.
like, oh my
I'm
god.
like- And I'm like, it's been 2
Biological.
years. But then like I tried and ultimately I realized that she was the one.
What
who
did you
said-
try? after 2 years?
I sent her to the gynac. I just sent her to the gynac. I
So
was
she
like,
just called you for help.
For help,
right? Like,
yeah.
You didn't feel responsible.
it was
or
really
anything.
long time ago, so like
Yeah.
Yeah, 2 years there's no gestation, man. So I don't think.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
That's not your baby.
Yeah,
Just to be
That's
sure.
not-
So, agar she called you up for help, then yeah, that the best thing that you did, you send her to a gynac. That's the only thing that you can do.
So what would you guys do? I'm just wondering, thinking out loud. What would you do? Like, tum log to doctors, of course. Like, how would you respond if somebody reached out to you, a woman reached out to you that, listen, I think I'm pregnant. I could use some help here.
Okay, and honestly, like, even
That
I'm
must
an
happen to you.
nephrologist, like in India, the concept of a female doctor is like, through years it's been like, female doctor hai to ye gynac hi hogi types and all. So I get all of these calls, like gone through my entire 20s attending these calls.
a lot of women, I believe, are comfortable with women gynacs only
Yes.
because I have
Yes.
seen that.
In a way, yes. Also, I think you understand them a lot more. Like at 25, it's easier to talk to a female doctor in that sense because you just don't know how to. Most of the men also come across as stuck up, right? I'm assuming. Like the doctors that you go to. I don't know how many friendly doctors have you met.
I'd win and say most men are
But just,
stuck
to,
up.
but just to counter this point, I think I've seen in my medical practice male gynecologists, and man,
They're really nice
Whoa.
people. Nothing
Yeah.
against guys in general. Like they're really
Yeah,
nice.
this is not about
people.
gender.
Yeah.
This is not about
Yeah. But yeah, I'm sure there's a level of comfort that
So
of
you
course
straight
comes
up
in.
like would objectively look at the situation
If a
Niharika
person
just
comes
said.
up to me and asks for an MTP tomorrow, come on, man, she's asking for a medical procedure. This is my
No,
job.
as a friend.
As
As
a friend?
as a human being. Like,
Oh.
if somebody comes to you and says that, listen, I think I may have conceived and this is not what I planned for myself in my life right now, how do you respond to it? Anshul? Oh, we know how you responded to it.
It's
Smriti.
like, send him to a guy.
Yeah.
You have someone on your speed dial or something like. Iske paas jana.
It's been a while.
It's been a while.
It's been a while. I'm sorry.
Okay.
guys. Let's take your role back to a doctor. And
Sure.
you both are here for, I believe you made it clear that it was more about safe versus unsafe abortion.
Yes.
Yeah, in
Yes.
India, right
Access.
now, it's about safe versus unsafe abortions.
That
What's-
is the only debate.
That is the only debate
Yes.
that there is.
We have no debates about abortion laws. Little here and there, but it's okay. It's not as bad as Roe versus Wade, or even, in fact, other places, parts in Europe and stuff. We still have much more advanced, progressive rules. India is one of the first countries that actually has bereavement rules for abortion. If when a woman has a child aborted,
Yeah.
she's one of the India is one of the first countries to give her leave
Yes,
for something like that.
yes, a woman is
So-
entitled to 6 weeks of leave if you're
Yes,
going through an
1.5
abortion or a
months.
miscarriage.
You have.
That's
You
great.
have that. So I think on that case, when for the other times where you have to shit on the Indian government and say, oh, the Indian government, man, the legislation for this is absolutely good. It-
But that's
Yes.
India now. How about India and rather the world in general, the religious.
India doesn't need to care about these things. What's happening there, man?
Yeah,
we
but-
have our own big.
I agree,
We
and
don't have a
I'm
cup of
appreciating
chai. We have a-
India.
But do you guys think there's
Padili
going to be a
of chai.
ripple effect after what's happened in
I
America?
hope it comes from us. I
don't
really hope it
think
comes
so.
from us.
I know,
I
right?
really
That
hope
would-
it comes from us.
That'd be great.
I was reading this book, Freakonomics, and there was a parallel drawn between the reducing crime rates in US and the judgment of Roe versus Wade passed. It said that because abortion is now allowed, so the number of unwanted kids go down, and within a span of 18 to 20 years, the number of people in that age group who are likely to become criminals goes down so drastically
Absolutely.
that the crime rate goes
It's-
down.
When you see, for example, when people say they're pro-life, we want that child. The woman is in no way certain of taking care of that child. Okay. You end up for a pro-life person, you end up jeopardizing her life and that child's life.
Life.
And that child is going to get out because there's negligence on the parental part. The child is hopefully the child does not, but more or less it doesn't happen so that the child gets into some sort of delinquency or any kind of abnormal behavior.
Be a little bit on religion, maybe.
Well,
Every religion
see-
has had its fair share of condemning that there
Yes,
shouldn't, there,
yes,
there- abortion shouldn't be allowed until unless.
Abrahamic faiths, Abrahamic religions have very, very
We would like to go into the specific religions, like let's say Hinduism.
Hinduism. See, man, now to That's another big debate. That's another debate for later, guys. But Hinduism,
Yeah, basically at the end of the day,
historically
so
has
your
never had a
society is run by religion, by social norms and all of that.
Yeah.
The law is out there to protect it more scientifically, I believe. You look at the evidence, what is happening in your society, what are the consequences to everything. Believing that yes, having a child and all of that is good, but practically when you have a child, there's raising a child, there's poverty, there is education, there is infrastructure, there's resources, there's so many things that the government needs to provide for at the end of the day. So practically speaking in India, because we also have dealt with the first-hand problem of overpopulation, of people having 8 kids, 9 kids, of states like UP and Bihar exploding with no jobs, no resources.
I was kidding about 100 kids, just clarifying.
Yeah.
Too late, bro.
Too
मतलब
late.
थोड़ा late हो गया उसके लिए.
We also realize what are the consequences of making these laws, and then just, you're talking in the air and going like, yeah, let's have 8 kids if you want to,
when you
thing.
speak of religion getting into state terms and government abortion, I think they should really religion should not get into state terms. State should be governed by science and the people, and that's it. Rather people through which science, because of the universities and what we deem fit.
I think that's a...
And after that, because it's through the people, so we have no problem. If the
Because-
university says, oh, this is the people, then it's a problem. But the people have made the universities will, through the people, guide what it is. In India, historically, I wouldn't say India, but before
world in
India
general.
was made, whatever the law of the land was, whatever the medical sciences that govern this land, they've had abortifacients quite before, long time ago. They didn't have, if they had abortifacients, they knew that this was an issue.
Because what I analyzed was that the act of abortion not being allowed to be carried out on women
In the US.
everywhere stems from the general patriarchal,
Yes.
anti-feminist nature of
Control.
all the religions, because of which the bodily autonomy is not given to
But
women.
see, when you see patriarchal, it sounds directly, it's not, it's...
I'm not targeting any
No,
specific
one
religion.
minute, I'll tell you. It's not about patriarchal, this thing. Every religion that you would confer to is patriarchal by itself,
Yeah.
with or without abortion laws. Okay? So when you target any Abrahamic faith, for example, okay, I'm not going to name any. The viewers and our panels were much smarter to understand what this is. They by themselves are patriarchal.
No, that is not fair.
you know,
there are-
Hinduism
I-
is
I just-
equally patriarchal.
I
Every
just,
religion is equally patriarchal.
yeah,
I don't think any woman would stand up in any city and say, "Oh my God, just because I'm a Hindu and not an XYZ religion,
Yeah.
I have not faced patriarchy." It's a very, very ingrained.
Patriarchy is synonymous with these archaic terms.
Yes, and being a medical practitioner, being here for 10 years, having met and dealt with, or I have met people of all religion who have had to go through this. So, like, putting it on religion is very, very unfair. It's a matter of how society functions, be whatever religion.
How do you doctors...
That's being idealistic, actually. To actually think of it, because no, if you have to think of it, the reason we have Roe versus Wade is because of religion getting into state. Tomorrow, if
Yes.
Hinduism gets into state, we will not have such
Yeah.
right-wing Hinduism gets into the.
Currently, the laws are based on the kind of feedback we get from the society in terms of the practical problems that it
Right.
creates.
Once a
Yeah.
political zeitgeist changes, you're going to have different rules in this country.
Yes,
So
and
we
that's
have
where-
to keep in mind that the judgment which overturned Roe versus Wade, the sentiment that it conveys, that a woman has no right over the fetus right after fertilization. The state can force her to give birth. We have to understand that it's not just about Hinduism. It's about a section of the world, the Western world, which we idealize कि अरे ये तो बहुत modern है, ये तो बहुत forward है. But let's face it, even the United States of America has a number of communities, a number of sections of particular religions.
Demographics,
which
basically, yes.
I would not say that necessarily. There are specific communities which just refer to women as they are child bearers. The second they are of the age where they can get married, they get married, and then it is their task to just bear children.
Interesting fact about Roe versus Wade is Richa Chadha tweeted it surprisingly that 2 people on the Supreme Court bench which overturned the Roe versus Wade were rape predators, and from what I could in my limited time that I found out before the podcast was about to be shot, one of them is a rape accused.
So one of a very very interesting take by
Richa
this,
Chadda.
no this,
Okay.
another podcast that I was listening to was a lot of people in America who are pro-life right now are celebrating this judgment which overturns a right of a woman to get an abortion done. The second they have a mistress and she gets pregnant and they don't have a choice or an option to terminate it, they will either find a way to terminate it or they will get out of that situation.
No, but the thing is, in the US, like for example, I'm a woman in probably state of Michigan, from the south, and now that after the law has been passed, if I like, so the thing is, why there is such an uproar, is not because in the US there are abortions allowed, but until a certain duration, that duration, a woman ultimately, worst case scenario, not worst case scenario, it's actually the ideal scenario. She understands that she's pregnant after she missed a period. That is a month, okay, like 4 months.
4 weeks.
That 4 weeks. That gives you 2 weeks in the US to abort your child. 2 weeks is
Nothing.
What if someone has
can be
PCOS
impossible.
and she does not have
It's
regular
impossible.
periods?
And the thing is, if I'm from a red state, I go to a blue state, that's a democratic state that allows medical termination, get it done, I come back, and there I have a prosecution case facing me. That is the problem, man. And that is an issue.
Thankfully, we're not in US right now.
Oh,
Thankfully.
That's the best I
Thank
can say
God,
about
man.
that right now.
what is it? Land of the free and home of the brave, innit?
And that's India. I think that was good. Smriti, conclude the
Medical part of things.
medical part of abortion briefly, if you could.
Okay. So currently in India, the options that we have is that up to currently, by the new law, 24 weeks you can get aborted. 20 weeks you just need to walk up to one gynecologist or a person who's sanctioned or to do the abortion, an MTP. There is a medical way, there is a surgical way. The earlier your pregnancy, medical way is preferred. Later on in the pregnancy, as a rule, surgical way is preferred. More or less, government hospitals, it's almost free. Private hospitals will vary as per the hospital, the charge of it. Medical, like I've already said, is generally cheap. It's about less than $1,000 just for the cost of medicines. Surgical ways will include ways in which they will basically clear out the uterus and scrape off the products of conception. It's not a horribly invasive way or it's not a major surgery or anything. It's generally a daycare procedure. Through that period, you can have cramps, you can have heavy bleeding. Those are the kind of complications to expect. Follow your physician's orders. The law is comparatively general, so you can get all the help that you need. And the bottom line is, currently in India, the laws are liberal. Go to the physician, let him do what they
Great.
can.
All right. Cheers to the.
Correct.
Cheers
Yeah.
to that. Actually, that's a lot of information bundled up. Niharika, a little bit about the law.
So legally, a woman, married or otherwise, can walk up to a medical professional who's qualified to carry on a medical termination of pregnancy and request for a pregnancy because it may be affecting her physical or mental health. And bottom line is that they're going to tell you what your plan of action is, as she just described. But more than that, one has to keep in mind that legally no one can disclose your identity except to the government officials. They can be penalized for disclosing your identity. They cannot threaten you by saying, if you're in case of unmarried girls, they cannot threaten you by saying that you need to get your parents' consent. You do not need anybody's consent if you're over 18 years. And it's a procedure. It's going to take a toll on you, but then if that's what you got to do, then you got to do that.
That's the law.
Yeah.
That's a law.
Thank you, Niharika.
Thank you, Anshul.
Thank you, Smriti. And
Thank
finally, thank you, Veer. I think you're the best guest I've had on the podcast so far because it's been so entertaining. Before we
And your questions
prolong
to Anshul,
the
man.
duration, let's abort today's episode. Let's call it adjourned.
adjourned.